Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of our Rescue Heroes. Our guest today is the founder of Horse and Hound School, which helps people with their horses and dogs. She is a bowen therapist. She is a co-director of the Slow Dog Movement, which helps people to connect with their dogs, especially rescue dogs. She volunteers at Asheville Greyhound Trust Branch, which is in Essex. She is also a trustee and patron of Project Galgo. Join me in conversation with Pennie Clayton.
Looking forward to talking with you.
Likewise, Pennie. Welcome to the show. It's my pleasure to host you today. So you have been doing some really amazing work. And honestly, I can spend hours speaking with you and understand all the things that you are into, and you are passionate about. So to begin with, out of all those many things that you've been doing, what is that one thing that gets you out of bed every day?
That's really easy. What gets me out of bed every morning are my dogs.
Lovely.
Especially during lockdown, I got into this really nice habit of taking one of my dogs to the churchyard, and we'd sit with a cup of coffee and I still do it now because it's lovely. I would sit with a cup of coffee, and she used to watch squirrels, and it's particularly beautiful in the summer.
How beautiful. That's amazing. And yeah, it's therapeutic, isn't it? To be with your dog and observing them, what they observe. That's amazing. Pennie, there are so many do's and don'ts floating around, when it comes to pets. What is the most common mistake that is made by pet owners?
Okay, I might be a bit controversial here. I think, and it's not really their fault, but I think the biggest problem is people getting information off of social media. And asking people in the park if they've got a problem with their dogs, asking people in the park. Because as a friend of mine always has a really good expression, and it is, I've been driving cars for 40 years, but I haven't got a clue how they work. So it's the same kind of thing. People may have had dogs or horses for that matter for a really good chunk of their lives. That doesn't mean that they understand everything about them. We, as professionals, study, and we never stop studying. We're always got our nose in a webinar, or we're networking together. We do a lot of networking, and we just never stop learning. So sometimes we have to do that thing where you'd been taught something and you have to unlearn it. That's very, very common.
That's true.
Things changing all the time.
Wow. Well, that's very true, I suppose, because animal psychology is completely different from human psychology. So do you think treating them as humans, right, can have an adverse effect?
I don't actually, because there are a lot of similarities. So in respect to, particularly with dogs, our brains and their brains are very similar. So in actual fact, I use quite a lot of analogies when I'm working with people. And for example, somebody was asking me about their greyhound the other day and saying that she woke her up really early. And she said she does it for attention. And I said, actually, she probably does it because she wants to be reassured. So she spent all of her life surrounded by the greyhounds until she went home, and then she wakes up. I think there's a fundamental mistake in the times that she's feeding her, and she's hungry and she's lonely, and she just wants somebody to say, it's fine, it's okay, we're here.
So I think we can say in that case that part of it is good, that, you know, as we say, the emotions are same. So, you know, to some extent, understanding them, being kind to them is all sort of human nature. But I think going overboard, like not understanding their body language, I'm assuming their body language would be different from ours.
Yeah. That's very true. Excuse me, that the body language is different, but in a way, once you've learnt a little bit, it's like learning any language, isn't it? Once you've learnt a little bit, then you're in a really good place. It's a really good foundation, and you start building up that foundation. The most difficult thing is when people ignore what they see in front of them.
That's true. That's true. I think the observation is missing. Yeah, I think it's got, with them, probably we got to be more, you know, we got to be observing their body language, what the signals that they are trying to give us. Yeah,
observation. And this is one of those things that comes up a lot between professionals, particularly in dog professionals, and, you know, when we're talking amongst ourselves, is that they're very big on studies. And I'm not saying studies are bad, they're really, really good. I mean, we need people to be doing studies, but we also need people to be observing. So your observations are incredibly powerful if you've been spending years watching dogs.
Well, I think that is something which we humans need to learn from them, because that's how they connect with us. They observe, right? They just observe.
They do. And absolutely. They do. They observe us and watch us, because that's how they learn a lot, ever such a lot of skills when they're around the house and when we're out. But if we don't do the same for them, then it doesn't really make sense if you're living in your house with another creature.
That's true. So let's switch gears. There is a very engaging article that you have published on pet socializing, right? Can you throw some light on how we can work on pandemic puppies because they have missed out on socializing during lockdown?
Let me start at the beginning. So this is part of, as far as I'm concerned, this is part of things, a lot of things that I've been learning over the last year in particular. People have been very, very worried about the socialization thing. As far as puppies are concerned, it's very easy to do too much with them because they're very young, they are very vulnerable, they get tired very easily. So when people hear other people talking about socialization, they often mistake, I'm thinking really carefully what I'm going to say, they mistake socialization for lots of very fast activities. This is socialization, what we're doing now. We don't need to be, as we know from the pandemic, we don't need to be in the same room as each other. we can still talk and socialise.
That's great.
So it's very easy to flood a puppy by putting him or her in the wrong situation. So, for example, their brains are rapidly developing. They have lots of what are called excitatory neurons in their brains, which makes them look like they're jumping about everywhere and they're really excited and they need lots and lots of energy, and they've got lots of energy and they need to expend it. And the brain is really trying hard to rebalance itself. But at that time, they don't, the brain is developing. So in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, the brain develops inhibitory neurons, which calm the behaviour down a little bit. So if we were talking about observation, if we observe a puppy dashing around all over the place, it would seem that he'd need or she'd need lots and lots of things to do. In actual fact, they need up to 18 hours sleep a day. Otherwise, they won't grow. They won't develop how we want them to be. They'll be, they're very vulnerable in their bodies and in their minds. So it's very easy to do too much with them too early.
I think just like humans, I would say.
Yeah, just like humans, exactly what we're saying.
Yeah.
Everybody's aware that their children, they know when their children, if they have children, are tired, and it can look like they're bouncing off the walls, and they know they're tired. And that's the one thing that people, I find myself, I'm going to write an article on it actually soon. I find myself defending the dogs and saying to them, he's doing this because of this. And it's a really strange thing that I'm defending somebody's dog.
Right.
Instead of perhaps you'd expect it to be the other way around, and they would be defending their dog for doing something bad or what they felt was bad. And this comes back to observation. Socialisation is all about observation. So if I'm helping people with puppy classes, we never go very far. I do outdoor puppy classes. We walk a little bit. We are out doing stuff, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour sometimes. We're not doing very much though. We're walking and stopping and having a chat and having a look at dogs that are mooching around. It's quite a quiet area, or there might be somebody walking, or there might be somebody riding a bike. And it's just very gradual introductions to things instead of flooding them and putting them in a situation where everything's coming from all sides.
All sides, yeah. As they say that if you miss out on training them on socializing in the first 6 months, then it's going to be difficult, and the puppy may not turn out to be that friendly. Is that true?
This comes from a very old study which was done, I think, in the 1960s. Somebody might question that, but this very old study, which was that the puppies lived with the mother, and every so often they would get exposed to humans, and those puppies didn't come out of that situation very well. But that was done a long time ago, and it was very specific to people. These days we understand more about their brains, so we understand if they're overstimulated and we put them into too many difficult situations, then actually the same thing can happen. They're just frightened. They're very worried and anxious and frightened of being out in the big wide world because it's all going on around them.
Yeah.
So in actual fact, the pandemic wasn't a particularly bad time for puppies, because certainly I know that I started puppy classes and they were outside, and I've carried on with them outside by the June. So we'd gone into lockdown in March. by the end of June, I just had gathered a few puppies, and we did a little bit, and we mooched around and did a bit of recall. So there were opportunities.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
that wouldn't have been, that actually, seeing that nobody could go in anywhere in March and April anyway, the puppies were ready to just go out and about and do a little bit. So it worked for a lot of people. It did work absolutely fine.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because probably, as you said, trying to gather information from everywhere, and due to which what exactly is happening is with pet owners, that they may be cramping in too much of training in the first 6 months or whatever, 8 months, and due to which I think it just ends up building anxiety in the puppy.
And it's very, very easy. In actual fact, when I had my very first dog, I was thinking about this the other day. You didn't go to train, and I'm not saying this is right, because obviously it's not right, but you weren't allowed to go to training classes until they were 6 months old. That was the starting point for puppy classes. Then it was a long, long time ago for sure, but then it's almost gone in the opposite direction now, that everybody's out pressing their puppies into really, really negative situations. They're not necessarily always positive.
Oh, well, that's sad. Well, I hope that now that things have opened up and the awareness is slowly coming in, if we start slowly exposing them to the outside world, one step at a time. And I'm assuming that the socializing can start within the family itself, right?
Absolutely. So it starts with the family, and really and honestly, if you thought about what happens to children, you don't go far wrong. So maybe there'd be a couple of children playing together, and then everybody would go home, and it's all done. The slower you take it, the puppies you don't hold them back by taking things slowly. And the reason I know that specifically is because I take the greyhounds home. Both of my greyhounds came home at 3. So until that time, they'd only ever seen greyhounds. They'd only ever been in kennels, and they'd only ever been racing. They'd never been anywhere apart from a racetrack. If they can learn how to socialise and how to build good associations with the dogs, then it doesn't make sense to push puppies into really busy situations where they're constantly feeling a bit anxious, or they get to be so excited in situations that they just become almost becoming a little bit bullying sometimes.
Pennie, you have been working for so many years now, right? And you have so much of experience. Can you share any experience which you thought was challenging?
It's probably easier to ask which one wasn't really. There's constantly lots of challenges because people have preconceptions about their dogs, and they feel that they should be doing certain things at certain times. It's like I said earlier, sometimes I'm in the role of defending the dogs. So they might say, oh, he shouldn't be doing that, or why is he doing that? And there's always a reason. So every situation can be challenging. Normally, the more difficult ones are, to be absolutely honest, the most challenging ones are the people that have taken on dogs that haven't thought about it. They've just thought it would be nice to have a dog. They haven't thought about the consequences of how much room they take up in the house, or how much fur comes off them, how they, have needs, so they they need to be reassured. Same kind of thing that I went back to earlier about the greyhound. They haven't realised that they're sentient beings. They need emotional support, just like we do.
Yeah, yeah.
And they don't do, as far as they're concerned, if they're doing something, they don't know it's about behaviour. So if they're trying to do dog behaviours, like let's say digging in the garden, there's loads and loads of holes in my garden. People feel, you know, they're horrified when their gardens are transformed into, looks like the surface of the moon. If that's a puppy, then they will grow out of it. But they are very natural behaviours for dogs, digging and rolling in the earth and rolling in horrible, nasty, stinky things. You know, it's such a dog thing to do. So we have to be aware that that's just part of being a dog. We might not like it.
Yeah, I think that's where that, you know, we need to be having that in our mind, that they are dogs, we are humans, and that we need to have that division in our mind, you know, not treat them like humans or expect something, you know, oh, you know, humans won't do, so dogs also shouldn't do. That kind of doesn't make sense.
That's the part that doesn't make sense, because we've already said that, you know, there's a big similarity in our brains, but dogs are a different species and they have a particularly different set of behaviours called an ethogram. So they act like dogs, they're not people, so they don't act like people.
Tell me top 3 myths that you really want to break, which has been going on for years now, and you know, you're trying to break that.
Probably the worst one that's still circulating is the myth about dominance, which you probably have come across, in as much that if you let a dog sit on your sofa, he will take over your house. That's a dominant behaviour. Dominance theory came from a scientist who was studying wolves in, I think, the 1970s. He was studying a whole load of unrelated, they didn't belong to the same family, a whole bunch of adolescent wolves who were obviously just like adolescent children, really, or adolescent teenagers, who were behaving a totally different way to a family group. So wolves would raise their cubs in exactly the same way as a dog would raise their puppies. So they go out and hunt and the puppies eat first. So they have these really strong social connections.
Wow.
So this whole idea of, you know, we have to eat first, or we have to make sure they don't sleep on the bed because they'll get dominant. If a dog growls because you sit down on the sofa, or what else happens, or they pull really, really hard on a walk, mostly, well, there's different reasons for that, but often if you sit down beside a dog and he growls, generally it's because they're in pain or they feel threatened. It's nothing to do with dominance. So dominance is a really big thing. The socialisation thing is probably another myth, in as much that we have to take more care about socialisation. So that's another myth. How we do it, how we go about it, making sure the puppies aren't tired when we put them into a situation, going to, you know, it's becoming more and more popular for dogs to have to go to busy dog parks, and they never really existed over here, but they do now. So there's a few around here, and if you go pretty much any time of the day, the whole area's, you know, full of dogs.
Yeah, full of dogs.
First thing with dogs all running about. So some dogs are fine, some dogs have a very bad experience and they become very worried and concerned and anxious around other dogs, and that creates a lot of problems for them.
I agree to this, because I think too many dogs in one place sometimes can be scary for the one who are a bit shy, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, you know, you never quite know who's going to be shy.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same with children, isn't it? So, you know, if you put a whole load of children in one place and just let them get on with it, somebody would be bullying somebody else.
Yeah.
Somebody else would have fallen off the swing or something and be crying. Somebody else would be hiding. Oh gosh, I don't like it.
I think it's exactly, you're right. I mean, with dogs, if you just think about how you would, you know, take your children to a safe place, or you would ensure that they take rest, they sleep well, or something like that, and you make sure that they are not emotionally stressed or something. Yeah. I think it's pretty much the same with our pets.
It's always easier if I go to see people with dogs that have children, because they then, I can see their faces going, oh yeah, they are so aware of those things. They hadn't really occurred to them. So it just takes somebody to say, well, what happens with your children when they're tired and hungry? What happens to us when we're hungry? Very grumpy. I get very grumpy when I'm hungry.
Me too. What's the third one you feel that it's important that we break the myths?
Probably the rescue dog one, which kind of is part of the same thing, really. People seem to expect that a rescue dog will settle in really, really quickly. Whereas there is a little infographic going around, and it says something like, I can't remember exactly how it's phrased now, but it basically says three months to settle in. I would dispute that, and so do the rescues that I work with. 3 months is a very, very short time for a dog that's maybe been, I work with a charity that brings dogs over from Spain. That's a very, very different situation over here for them, or the greyhounds that are in a very different situation, or the dogs that come over from Romania, or even a dog that's been, as we were talking about the pandemic and socialisation, perhaps a dog that's been living with somebody who has, you know, has never been out of the house. So that would take a lot more than 3 months. That's you're probably looking at a year. And it's something I used to say to people a lot with the horses, and they'd say, oh, my horse is this. And I'd say to them, just jot it down in a book or put it on your phone. Just jot what happens, what month, and if they get a little bit, horses get a little bit strange in the spring and the autumn because they shed their coats, and all the hormones are booming around in order to shed their coats. Oh. And it's something, I think people are more aware of that now, but it used to shock everybody. It's like, well, you know, what's creating the time of year where they shed their coats? You know, it's the hormones, of course. They're really unsettled. But to look at, take a whole year at least, because then you can think back to when I got this dog in March, let's say, what was she like? She was very withdrawn, or she was very stressed, or she wouldn't eat. Or with the greyhounds, in fact, the opposite is often true. They just bolt their food like they've never seen food before, and they inhale it. Wow. And that does change because often they don't, and this, I'm going to say this, they don't get the best food. So when we give them nice food, and perhaps when we cook for them, it just smells delicious. So they just, and it's gone.
Probably with rescue dog, unlike you know, your puppy that you get from a breeder, it already has something stored in its mind, and it's going to kind of take time to erase that, come out of fear, and feel that, okay, this is not the same. These people are not the same people. The situation is not the same. This place is not the same. To take that
different.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how difficult that would be if somebody transported me up like in a UFO now, and I had to learn to live with aliens.
Yeah.
How difficult would that be? And it is. It is very different, actually. Well, I don't know, because I've never been taken up by a spaceship. But, you know, you can imagine how difficult that would be.
Do you think a rescue puppy would learn faster, or a rescue dog, an older dog?
Yeah, a rescue puppy should learn faster. The only problem you've got, and this is not necessarily only rescue dogs, but we know, again, from studies that, and this is quite common knowledge, so it's nothing earth-shattering, if the mother's stressed when she's having the puppies, then the puppies are bathed in all the stress hormones, so they're going to be stressed when they're born.
Oh, I think this is exactly what is with humans. You're so right, because I remember when I was pregnant, my mother used to say, "Oh, listen to good songs, listen to soft songs." Oh, that's amazing to know that, you know, it's the same with dogs. So how long you've been working in the rescue center?
So I started helping out with the greyhounds, I think about 2010. And I used to go every other week, and all that's kind of fallen by the wayside since the pandemic. I haven't got back into the habit, but I used to take lots and lots of different things with me, and I'd do some enrichment in the outdoor kennels with the greyhounds that they felt needed it, and they all needed it really, but some of them needed it more than others. So I used to do that. And then really now, and the year before the pandemic, I broke my wrist, so I wasn't, so really it's been more than 2 years, it's been more 3 years. I kind of got out the habit of actually driving over and helping them out. What I do now is, if a greyhound goes home and they have, the new owner has a problem with the greyhound, they generally give them my number. So I do what a friend of mine calls triage.
Oh, wow.
We talk about the problem, and on the phone talk it through, and then hopefully they've got enough information to be going on with. So that's probably more likely for me to be doing in that situation now.
Wow. Amazing what you've been doing, Pennie. And as I said, I can actually go for hours speaking with you and, you know, understanding all the things that you're passionate about. Having said that, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. And the nuggets of information that you've shared with our audience are really, really valuable. So thank you once again. And I truly appreciate the time that you took from your schedule to be with us here.
No problem at all. Thank you very much as well.
Thank you, Pennie. That was incredible. We can clearly see her passion in helping dogs, especially rescue dogs. Every pet is unique and special in his or her own way. The faster we acknowledge this and work around it, we will be able to bond better with our pets. Thank you all for joining today. Until next time.